Have you ever felt invisible in your own home? Like you vanished long before you ever left? This story isn't just about betrayal. It's about awakening. Stay until the end, because it might echo something buried deep within you. And if it does, tap like, hit subscribe, and let's not feel alone anymore. I never imagined I would become the sort of woman who would cross an irrevocable line. Yet one fateful night, my stepson extended a form of assistance that altered the course of my life forever. Life has a way of catching you off guard, presenting choices that divide your narrative into distinct chapters, the moments before and those that follow. It doesn't gently nudge you and whisper, "Watch out." This is the moment when everything transforms. It seeps in silently, gradually, much like water trickling through an unnoticed fissure. And when the moment of realization dawns upon you, you find yourself submerged in the consequences. My house was silent, yet it was not the serene silence one might hope for. The air was frigid, devoid of warmth, and the silence was so profound that the rhythm of your own heartbeat echoed like a solitary drum in the stillness. My husband was present, in a sense in body, but what about his heart? Examined thoroughly, years have passed since he last paid attention to the world around him. I ceased to inquire about my own well-being, ceased to notice my presence. I faded into the background of my own existence. I would prepare the evening meal, tidy up the laundry, and ensure the space is neat after everyone has finished their activities. And yet I find myself lying awake at night, pondering whether I truly made a difference in this world, curious if this is simply the way of marriage after the initial bliss has worn off. Perhaps that's the reason I remained oblivious to the subtle changes taking place around me. When eyes that were once merely known transformed into something deeper. When simple gestures began to resonate like vital connections. I had no intention of seeking it out. I had no intention of it. Yet my heart, it was weary of fading into the background, weary of maintaining the facade that all was well, weary of passing by a man who remained utterly unmoved as I wept in the kitchen, my back turned to him. When my stepson truly saw me, gazing at me with concern rather than judgment, it stirred something within me that I wasn't prepared for. It revealed a hidden truth, a memory I had long since entombed. In a single night, a fleeting moment of unexpected kindness transformed my perception of him, and the manner in which I perceived my own reflection. I longed to claim that I was the one who halted it. I longed to say that I stepped back before everything spiraled out of control. Yet I refrained. Now I carry a memory that remains indelible, accompanied by a silence in our home that speaks volumes beyond what words can convey. The events that transpired between us were not marked by noise. It was not an act of recklessness. The pace was languid, nuanced, and that is precisely what renders it so haunting. However, I shall reveal all to you, not out of pride. Yet, perhaps there exists another soul who resonates with the feelings I once harbored. Perhaps another soul lingers at that precipice, blissfully unaware of their precarious position. If you've ever experienced the sensation of invisibility within the confines of your own home, if you've ever longed to be acknowledged, listened to, or embraced, even just for a fleeting moment, then this narrative may resonate with you more deeply than you care to acknowledge. If you're still with me, I kindly ask you to take a moment to press that like button. Join the journey of the shocking infidelity saga. If any aspect of this resonates with you, if you found yourself entangled in a complex scenario that has made you doubt everything, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. I have perused them. I truly do. Your narrative could very well provide solace to another, easing their sense of isolation. Allow me to share the story of how it all commenced. What began as assistance evolved into an unforeseen journey. At 38 years old, with a marriage spanning 12 years, I found myself enveloped in a profound loneliness that eclipsed anything I had ever experienced before. The exterior of our home exuded beauty, with a meticulously maintained lawn, inviting warm lighting, and a fresh coat of paint. Yet within, a chill lingered, not in a physical sense but rather on an emotional level. A subtle tension hung in the air, the sort that eludes the eye yet grips your chest the moment you step inside. A silence that offers no comfort, only a heavy weight that constricts. My husband was not unkind. He refrained from raising his voice. He abstained from drinking. He remained honest. He merely was absent. Not in the ways that truly resonated with me. He would return from work, pour himself a drink, and gaze at his phone or the television for hours on end. Our conversations dwindled to the realm of the purely functional. Invoices, provisions, engagements. We shared dinner in close proximity, yet it seemed as though we were separated by vast oceans. It was not always like this. Once he had the ability to bring me to tears of laughter. As his fingers brushed against my lower back in the kitchen, it felt like a spontaneous spark igniting the air around us, when we shared unspoken secrets and fleeting looks that conveyed so much. Yet, as time passed, that gradually diminished. And at some point in the journey, I ceased my efforts to reclaim it. I persuaded myself that this was merely the essence of marriage as it evolves. Yet, I longed for the feeling of being seen as significant. I longed for the feeling of being noticed. I began to observe a gradual decline in my efforts to dress up. What was the purpose? He failed to notice when I donned a new dress. No remarks were made when I applied my makeup. One weekend, I took the plunge and dyed my hair a darker shade, embracing a bold change, something refreshingly different. Not a single word escaped his lips. Gave it not a second glance. However, just a few days later, my stepson did. He had only recently returned home. At the age of 21, he found himself grappling with the challenges of college life, and we extended an invitation for him to stay with us temporarily. He exhibited a demeanor that was courteous, composed, and consistently showed respect. Silent yet perceptive. A person of few words, yet when he spoke, his sincerity was unmistakable. Our moments together had been fleeting before he took the step to move in. His mother, my husband's former partner, held primary custody throughout much of his upbringing, resulting in our visits being rare. Yet here he was, beneath our roof, stepping into the very kitchen where I brewed my morning coffee, inquiring about my sleep. As he caught sight of me that morning, freshly transformed with my new hair color, he hesitated for a moment before asking, "Did you change something? It appears quite lovely." I blinked. The compliment wasn't excessive or out of place. Rather, it struck a chord simply because it had been ages since anyone had taken the time to notice anything about me. I offered a smile and expressed my gratitude, while he simply nodded and returned to his tasks. There's no strange vibe, no underlying tension. Just a straightforward, genuine observation. Yet it remained with me. He was the sole observer when I trimmed my hair, the only one to inquire about my well-being during my headache, the singular voice of gratitude when I prepared a meal. I had grown unaccustomed to that, and it wasn't solely his words that affected me. It was in the cadence of his voice, the intensity of his gaze as I shared my thoughts, as if I truly held significance, as if he was genuinely engaged. I struggled to recall the last moment when someone regarded me in such a way, as if my words held significance beyond mere background chatter. My husband and I occupied the same bed, yet we drifted into slumber as if we were mere strangers. Absent are the tender kisses of good night, devoid of warmth. The rhythmic sound of his snoring filled the air beside me as I lay there, fixated on the ceiling, contemplating how much longer I could endure this existence. I questioned whether this numbness was a standard part of life, if this was simply the way things unfolded. And yet, there he was, this young man residing in the same house, unwittingly serving as a reminder of my own existence. I made an effort to overlook it. I truly did. I attempted to dismiss the moments when I found myself stealing glances at him over breakfast. There was a subtle flutter in my heart when he inquired about my day. I reassured myself that I was merely appreciative of the kindness, that it posed no threat. Yet that silent void in my marriage, which had settled in like an old piece of furniture, became intolerable once more. For I had now experienced the warmth of being seen, the comfort of being spoken to, the validation of being acknowledged. Once you experience that kind of warmth after enduring years of cold, it becomes nearly impossible to feign indifference to the desire for more. Unbeknownst to me, the seed had already taken root, and soon it would flourish into something beyond my grasp. At 38 years old, with a marriage spanning 12 years, I found myself engulfed in a profound loneliness that eclipsed any I had ever experienced. The exterior of our home exuded beauty, with a meticulously maintained lawn, inviting warm lighting, and a fresh coat of paint. Yet within, a chill lingered. Not in a physical sense, but rather on an emotional level. A palpable tension hung in the air, an invisible weight that pressed against your chest the moment you stepped inside. A silence that does not comfort, but rather constricts. My husband was not unkind. He refrained from raising his voice. He abstained from drinking. He remained honest. He merely was absent, not in the ways that held significance for me. He would return from work, pour himself a drink, and gaze at his phone or the television for hours on end. Our conversations dwindled to the realm of the purely functional: invoices, provisions, engagements. We dined together, yet it seemed as though vast oceans lay between us. It was not always like this. Once he had the power to make me laugh to the point of tears. As his fingers brushed against my lower back in the kitchen, it felt like a spontaneous moment of connection. In those moments, we shared unspoken laughter and fleeting looks that held the weight of the world. Yet, as time passed, that gradually diminished, and at some point in the journey, I ceased my efforts to reclaim it. I persuaded myself that this was simply the essence of marriage as it evolves. Yet, I longed for the feeling of being seen as significant. I longed for the feeling of being noticed. I began to observe a gradual decline in my efforts to dress up. What was the purpose? He failed to notice when I donned a new dress. No remarks were made when I applied my makeup. One weekend, I decided to darken my hair. Something daring, a departure from the usual. Not a single word escaped his lips. Not a second glance was given. However, just a few days later, my stepson did. He had only recently returned home. At the age of 21, he found himself grappling with the challenges of college life, and we extended an invitation for him to stay with us for a time. He exhibited a demeanor of politeness, maintaining a reserved nature while consistently showing respect. Silent yet perceptive. A person of few words, yet when he spoke, his sincerity was unmistakable. Our moments together had been fleeting before he took the step to move in. His mother, my husband's former partner, held primary custody throughout much of his upbringing, resulting in our visits being rare. Yet here he was, beneath our roof, stepping into the very kitchen where I brewed my morning coffee, inquiring about my sleep. As he caught sight of me that morning, freshly transformed with my new hair color, he hesitated for a moment and inquired, "Did you change something? It appears quite lovely." I blinked. Not due to the compliment being excessive or out of place. It was not. Yet it had been an eternity since anyone had truly seen me. I offered a smile and expressed my gratitude, to which he merely nodded before returning to his tasks. No strange vibes. There is no tension. A straightforward and sincere remark, yet it remained with me. He was the sole observer when I decided to cut my hair. The sole person who inquired about my well-being when I was suffering from a headache. The sole individual who expressed gratitude when I prepared a meal. I had grown unaccustomed to that feeling. It was not merely the words he spoke, the manner in which he expressed it was striking. His gaze upon me as I spoke was something to behold, as if I truly held significance, as if he were truly attuned to the words being spoken. The memory of the last time someone gazed at me in such a way eludes me. What I said was far from mere background noise. My husband and I occupied the same bed, yet we drifted into slumber as if we were mere strangers. There were no tender goodnight kisses. There is an absence of warmth. The rhythmic sound of his snoring filled the air beside me as I lay there, gazing at the ceiling, contemplating how much longer I could endure this kind of existence. Curious if this sensation of numbness is typical, if this is simply the way of the world. And yet, there he was, this young man residing in the same house, unwittingly serving as a reminder of my own existence. I attempted to overlook it. I truly did. I attempted to dismiss the moments when I found myself stealing glances at him over breakfast. There was a subtle flutter in my heart when he inquired about my day. I reminded myself to appreciate the kindness I received. It was innocuous. Yet that silent void in my marriage, which had settled in like an unwelcome piece of furniture, became intolerable once more. For the first time, I understood the sensation of being truly acknowledged, to be addressed, to receive recognition. Once you experience that kind of warmth after enduring years of cold, it becomes nearly impossible to feign indifference to the desire for more. Unbeknownst to me, the seed had already taken root. It was inevitable that it would evolve into something beyond my grasp. That evening, slumber eluded me. In the enveloping darkness, I found myself lying still, the house around me wrapped in silence, save for the gentle hum of the refrigerator echoing from down the hall and the sporadic creaks of the wood as it settled into its nightly repose. My husband lay beside me, turned away, his back rising and falling in that slow, indifferent rhythm I had come to know so well. No hand extended to inquire about my well-being, no whispers, "Are you all right?" Only the unyielding chill of silence remains. Yet, in the depths of my thoughts, he lingered vividly. The gaze he cast upon me while seated on the couch, there was a softness in his tone, the glow in his gaze. I found myself revisiting that moment time and again. Perhaps there's someone who ought to look after you. A familiar sensation washed over me, a gradual throb unfurling within my chest. A warmth that had eluded me for what felt like an eternity took me by surprise. I endeavored to cast aside the thought, reminding myself that he was merely my stepson. Yet even that term stepson seemed peculiar in this moment. It seemed to miss the mark of who he was to me in that moment. I was not indulging in fantasies. I had no plans in mind. The impact he had on my emotions was impossible to overlook. It was then that the guilt began to seep into my thoughts. Had I truly been this desperate for love? Was my heart truly so barren that a mere gesture of kindness could dismantle me in such a profound way? I shifted onto my side, deliberately turning my back to my husband, my eyes wide and unblinking in the enveloping darkness. I sought to recall the last moment his fingers brushed against my skin, a fleeting attempt to bridge the distance between us. It was the last occasion he inquired about my well-being, free from the anticipation of a checklist in response. The most recent occasion we shared a laugh together. Years had passed, and that laughter, the sort that once bubbled up between us over the simplest of things, had faded so quietly that I didn't even realize it was missing until someone else brought a smile back to my face. It seemed as though two distinct versions of myself had emerged, the incarnation that once brimmed with vitality, whimsy, mischief, and allure. There lies a version of oneself in that bed, frozen and hollowed out by the weight of routine and the sting of neglect. There was a time when I cherished the moments my husband would quietly approach me at the sink, planting soft kisses on my neck. There was a time when his words alone made me feel beautiful, even in my most unrefined moments, with no makeup and hair in disarray. In the stillness of midnight, we would sway together in the kitchen, lost in a moment that needed no reason to exist. Yet now, I found myself unable to recall the last moment he gazed at me, as if I were something truly precious to cherish. I found myself pondering questions I never imagined I would contemplate. Is it truly so misguided to yearn for the sensation of feeling something once more? Is it truly so dreadful to desire to be seen, to be heard, to be acknowledged? I repeatedly reassured myself that nothing had truly occurred. It was merely a fleeting instant, merely an emotion. I chose not to take action. I did not overstep any boundaries. He had reached adulthood, matured, developed, mature enough to understand limits, of an age where he can articulate his own thoughts. I had no intention of enticing him. I had no intention of seeking anything out. I found myself relishing the spotlight. That is precisely what I reminded myself. I found myself relishing the spotlight. Yet, beneath the surface, I understood it was far from straightforward. Transcended mere recognition, it revolved around the essence of comprehension. For the first time in ages, it seemed as though someone truly recognized my presence once more. Not in the role of a wife, not in the role of a stepmother, merely as a woman. I began to observe my own actions in his presence, the journey of my relocation, the manner in which I expressed myself. I despised my awareness of it, yet I found myself powerless to change that fact. The manner in which my voice took on a gentler tone, the manner in which I tucked my hair behind my ear as he entered the room. I became aware of it and I despised that awareness, yet I pressed on. A dormant part of me, once silent and concealed, was beginning to stir from its deep slumber. It became impossible to overlook any longer. The true struggle lay beyond him. The focus was on me. What I required, the truths I had kept quiet for so long. The absence of what I craved within the confines of my home. And regardless of my feelings on the matter, the door had already been opened by me, even if I had yet to traverse it. Following that evening on the couch, a change stirred within our connection, nuanced. Silence. Yet undeniable, it went unspoken between us. Our conversation overlooked the manner in which he offered his assistance, or the manner in which he gazed at me, yet from that instant onward everything seemed to shift. Our moments together began to multiply. Of course, initially, as I prepared dinner, he would take a seat at the counter, sharing tales of his classes, expressing his frustrations, and revealing the challenges he faced in adapting after leaving campus. He confided in me that he felt as though he was adrift, suspended between two distinct realities of his existence, one that had fallen short, and another he had yet to unravel. The emotion resonated within me, deeper than I cared to acknowledge. I paid attention. As I revealed fragments of my own unease, he lent an attentive ear, truly attentive. It flowed naturally, without any sense of being contrived or uncomfortable. Seemed effortless. On most evenings, my husband would return home late, or sometimes not at all. Business trips began to occur with increasing regularity. Dinners became quiet, solitary affairs for me, until I began preparing enough for two, and he began appearing uninvited. It evolved into our serene little ritual. I would create something from scratch. He would assist in arranging the table. We would engage in conversation, and at times we would simply share a quiet moment together, but it was never the awkward sort. The kind that envelopes you in warmth and ease. A kind where silence speaks volumes, and mere presence suffices. And then arrived the night that deepened the journey. My husband departed for a 3-day business trip. This time I refrained from inquiring. I ceased my inquiries quite some time back. Relief washed over me, sparing me from the chill of his silence during dinner. On that evening, I prepared a modest pasta dish. He graciously volunteered to select the film. A touch of levity, a sprinkle of humor. We occupied our usual spots on the couch, each at opposite ends, as was our custom. There was a gap between us, yet it lacked the weight of separation. As the film unfolded, we found ourselves at a certain point, simultaneously reaching for the popcorn bowl. My hand inadvertently grazed his knot with a surprising intensity, yet we didn't withdraw immediately either. A sudden jolt coursed through me, a delicate spark that traveled up my arm like a soft whisper. For a fleeting moment our gazes intertwined. In that moment we averted our gazes and shared a soft, awkward laugh. Yet that laughter, it remained echoing in the air. The film continued to unfold, yet I scarcely absorbed the remainder of it. Silence enveloped us in the aftermath of that moment. Yet we remained exactly in our place, now even nearer. I sat with my legs tucked beneath me. I shifted my body ever so slightly towards him. His eyes wandered in my direction from time to time. As the evening drew to a close, he rose from his seat, stretched his limbs, expressed his gratitude for the meal, and retreated to his room. I lingered in my seat long after the credits had faded, fixated on the screen, my heart racing more than it ought to have. On that particular night, a dream visited me. The beginning is a blur, yet the sensation lingers vividly in my mind. In the dream, his presence was comforting, like a light in a long dark corridor. There was no touch, just the overwhelming warmth of being noticed again. His lips grazed the side of my neck, a whisper of contact, as if he hesitated, uncertain of his own desire. And I, allowing him to continue, desiring greater things, yearning for something greater. Within the dream, guilt was absent. There is no room for doubt. Only warmth, bond, security. I jolted awake, my skin aglow with warmth, my breath coming in quick, shallow gasps. For a brief moment, I found myself in a state of confusion, confused. My body remains ensnared in the emotions of that dream. My thoughts swirl, tangled in a web of shame and yearning. I propped myself up, placing my hand against my chest, as if that gesture could soothe its frantic rhythm. What was unfolding within me? How could something so seemingly insignificant, merely kindness and presence, have transformed into this? I rose from my seat, donned my robe, and made my way silently to the kitchen, craving water, seeking a diversion. There he stood, already in the kitchen, preparing breakfast, exactly as it was in the dream. The storm approached with a deliberate, weighty presence. The sky had been murmuring all evening, a low, distant rumble of thunder that seemed more a portent than mere noise. Flashes of lightning danced through the windows, illuminating the living room in brief, brilliant bursts. The atmosphere was dense, as if an unseen force was approaching, yet I couldn't discern whether it originated from the world beyond or stirred within my own being. Once more my husband had vanished. A journey awaits under the cloak of night. Yet another excuse I chose not to interrogate. Curled up on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, I feigned the act of reading, yet my true focus lay in the sounds around me, anticipating, wishing he might emerge from his room just as he did on that unforgettable night of the film. Perhaps we could engage in conversation. Perhaps we might not need to at all. Perhaps the stillness would suffice once more. Suddenly, all was engulfed in darkness. A sudden resounding pop echoed from afar, plunging the house into an impenetrable darkness. A darkness that draws all things into its depths. I remained still for a moment, my heart pounding within my chest. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed through the hallway. Serene, unwavering, greetings. He spoke in a gentle whisper. Are you all right? I nodded, only to remember that he likely couldn't see my gesture. Indeed, seems that the power has gone out. He entered the room, a flashlight clutched in his hand. The light struck my face, causing me to flinch as I instinctively raised my hand to shield my eyes. He let out a soft chuckle. I apologize. He vanished once more, only to return moments later, bearing a pair of candles. He ignited each candle with care, arranging them thoughtfully throughout the room. The gentle dancing light transformed the familiar into something entirely new, gentler, more inviting. It felt as though we had become strangers, even within the confines of the same home. He settled next to me, not at the far end as he typically did, but nearer this time. Not quite in contact, yet near enough for me to sense his warmth. For a brief moment, silence enveloped us as we listened to the rain gently tapping on the windows, the wind pressing against the house as if seeking an entrance. He spoke softly, reminiscing. As a child, I used to dread storms. I glanced in his direction. What is the reason behind this? His gaze was fixed on the flickering candle flame, completely avoiding mine, because everything seemed to spiral beyond my grasp. Similar to, at any moment the tide could turn, and you find yourself powerless to alter the course of events. I inclined my head in agreement. I would understand that. He cast his gaze in my direction then, truly observing me. Have you ever sensed that turmoil within, even in the absence of a storm? The words lodged themselves in my throat. I averted my gaze, yet not swiftly enough to conceal the truth reflected in my eyes. Indeed, I murmured, constantly. We lingered in that space, the storm's growl intensifying, shadows waltzing across the walls. A palpable tension was rising, not merely from the shifting skies, but from an unseen force as well, a tension building in the space that separates us, a tension that had been brewing in the shadows for weeks, poised to emerge at the perfect moment. He adjusted his position, angling himself in my direction. It seems you prefer to keep your thoughts and experiences to yourself. I offered a feeble smile. There isn't a great deal to express. I find that hard to accept. The flickering flame of the candle held my gaze, drawing me into its warm glow. There was a time when I felt truly acknowledged, seeking, as if I held significance. He remained silent. He allowed me the opportunity to express myself. At this moment, I find myself merely an accessory in the narrative of another's existence. It feels as though I exist in the shadows, unseen by those around me. Not quite. The silence lingered once more. Yet, on this occasion it felt distinct. He extended his hand with deliberate slowness, a careful motion, as he tucked a stray lock of hair behind my ear. It was soft, nearly reluctant, yet it coursed a shiver through me. I remained still. I held my breath. His fingers hovered just above my cheek. My heart raced, yet I felt paralyzed, not out of fear, but rather from the gravity of the moment, from all that it signified. He gazed at me, his voice scarcely rising above a whisper. No one should have to endure such solitude. And just as the words hovered on the tip of my tongue, before I could summon the myriad reasons this was impossible, I found myself lost in the moment, grateful, overwhelmed by a long-lost sense of being seen. Not a great deal, only a small amount, sufficient yet not excessive. And he encountered me there, but I stopped myself. The boundary remained intact. Yet something in me had awakened. Unhurried, not untamed. Simply brimming with unspoken words between us. It was solace, it was a profound ache. It was the hushed anguish of two souls who had lingered too long in the facade of their own contentment. I was the one to withdraw initially. I remained silent. He did not either. We lingered in silence, inhaling the stillness, our gazes fixed, uncertain of what awaited us. And in an instant the world came to a halt. What had I wrought? The following morning, the quiet that enveloped us conveyed more than any spoken language ever might. Awakening before dawn, I felt the stiffness in my body, a remnant of the position I had succumbed to on the couch. The blanket clung to me, and the delicate fragrance of candles still danced in the air around me. The electricity had returned. The familiar hum of the fridge had made its way back into the room. The world beyond was serene once more, as if the tempest had never occurred. Yet within all was transformed. The sounds of the kitchen reached my ears, the gentle clink of a spoon against a mug, the quiet shuffle of his feet gliding over the cool tile. Yet this time silence reigned supreme. Good morning, no. There was no eye contact as I entered the room. He turned away from me, pouring coffee as if it were just another ordinary day, as if nothing had transpired, as if his lips hadn't brushed against mine mere hours before. I followed suit. I strolled by him, grabbed a banana I had no desire for, and peeled it merely to occupy my hands. My heart pounded fiercely within my chest, yet my expression remained composed. I had mastered the art of donning masks long ago. Silence enveloped us. There was no necessity for that. We were merely actors in a play, attempting to reverse a narrative that was beyond our control. As the afternoon wore on, my husband finally returned home. The suitcase landed on the floor, producing a muted thud. He brushed his lips against the crown of my head as he walked by, reminiscent of a casual greeting exchanged between colleagues, rather than the tender affection of a husband. He inquired about food, then vanished into the kitchen, leaving no time for a reply. He remained blissfully unaware of any discrepancies. He never did. Yet I did. All things came crashing down. My stepson remained withdrawn, greater than the norm. He lingered in his room for the better part of the day, and when he finally emerged, it was solely to depart. He mentioned he required some fresh air, claiming he was on his way to meet a friend. He hardly cast a glance in my direction as he exited through the door. And I felt unwell, not merely guilty but profoundly unwell. A profound swirling malaise that begins in the depths of your stomach and radiates through every fiber of your being. The moment played in my mind on an endless loop, the gentle embrace of it, the manner in which I had leaned in initially, how he had come to meet me in the middle. The gaze he wore afterward was one of confusion, uncertainty lingering in his expression. It was as if he harbored doubts about the reality of the moment that had just unfolded. I felt the urge to engage him in conversation, to inquire about his well-being. I wished to convey that my thoughts were not clear at that moment. It was indeed the storm. Shadows enveloped the world, the weight of solitude converging in a single moment. However, I chose not to. I remained silent. I meticulously folded the laundry, gave a thorough wipe to counters that were already spotless, prepared dishes that went unappreciated. And throughout it all, That moment echoed in my mind like a relentless refrain. During dinner that evening, we gathered as we typically did. My husband sits opposite me, his attention divided as he scrolls through his phone between mouthfuls. My stepson sits silently, maneuvering his food across the plate. I found myself feigning composure, all the while slowly coming apart moment by moment. As I chewed a mouthful of chicken, my husband suddenly remarked, "I think he's been distant lately. Perhaps there is something weighing on his mind." My fork nearly slipped from my grasp. I raised my gaze, striving to keep my voice unwavering. He has a multitude of responsibilities weighing on him at the moment. Most likely just feeling overwhelmed. My stepson remained silent. He remained utterly unperturbed. He rose a few minutes later, muttering something about heading out once more, and then departed. I observed him stride down the corridor, the sound of the front door clicking shut resonating behind him. There I remained, cradling a glass of untouched water, gazing into its depths as if it contained the solutions to questions I couldn't articulate. It was unclear whether he felt any remorse, if he despised me for allowing it to unfold, or if he found himself equally adrift in the aftermath, just as I did. All I understood was that everything had transformed, and there was no turning back. There are evenings that hold a stillness unlike any other, not merely in sound but in essence. In weight, that night a profound silence enveloped everything, as if the entire universe had chosen to forsake you. A silence that provides no solace, merely an expanse for contemplation, to twirl and twist in an endless dance. In the solitude of the living room, I found myself enveloped in shadows, curled into the corner of the couch as if seeking to merge with its fabric, to vanish entirely from sight. Hours had slipped by since my husband retired to bed. He made no inquiries about my whereabouts, did not seek me out, and offered not even a fleeting glance as he strode down the corridor. In all honesty, I felt a sense of relief. I was at a loss for words had he chosen to speak. In that stillness, I found myself questioning my very identity. Do I possess some inherent flaw that makes me unworthy? Or merely an individual yearning for affection? The question echoed relentlessly in my mind, a haunting melody that refused to fade away. I yearned to convince myself that it was merely the solitude, the years spent in the shadows, of experiencing the sensation of being a specter within my own union. Yet, can that truly be deemed sufficient justification? Is that a valid rationale? Or is it merely a justification I'm grasping at, wishing it will soften the weight of my guilt? I reflected on my husband, considering how, as the years passed, the man I once married transformed into a stranger before my eyes. Perhaps I had transformed and he simply failed to see it. Perhaps that was the most difficult aspect. It is not the lack of love that is felt, but rather the lack of understanding. He failed to notice the exhaustion that weighed upon me, how hollow I had turned. He remained oblivious to the nights I wept quietly in the bathroom, gazing at my reflection in the mirror as if it belonged to someone else. He remained oblivious to the unspoken inquiries I took with me to bed each night. Am I significant? Would he even realize if I vanished from his life? He was oblivious to it all. Yet another took action. I found myself pondering, what if it had ventured deeper? What if I had not withdrawn? Could I have allowed it to unfold? Would I have desired it? The reality I was reluctant to acknowledge, even within the confines of my own mind, was indeed affirmative. A fragment of my being yearned for it. It encompasses more than merely the tangible aspect. It wasn't the kiss itself, yet it is the emotion that underlies it. The bond, the embrace of warmth, the burden of visibility, of being embraced, of being wanted, if only for a fleeting moment. And that filled me with a deeper fear than anything else. For I was uncertain of what that revealed about my character, concerning the woman I had transformed into. Regarding the marriage I was still, in a sense, a part of, though in truth, I had been wandering beyond its confines for years. I contemplated sharing this with him, my husband, simply engaging in playful banter one evening over dinner, confessing as though a lost spirit yearning for retribution. Yet what words could I possibly choose to express myself? In the shadows of the storm, I found myself wanting to feel alive again. Not through action, but through the possibility that someone still saw me. Driven by an insatiable hunger for tenderness, how does one even start to untangle that? I envisioned the aftermath, the astonishment, the stillness, the agony. Yet, perhaps it holds no significance after all. Perhaps he would merely blink and return to his device. Perhaps he would find it entirely unremarkable. The pain cut deeper than the weight of remorse. In the end, he decided to leave, my stepson. Silently. Free from theatrics. Without a doubt. He remarked that it was time he discovered a residence nearer to campus. I refrained from inquiring about the reason. I made no pleas for him to remain. Our words have remained unspoken since that moment. I'm uncertain whether he harbors feelings of animosity towards me. I'm uncertain whether his recollection aligns with mine. I cannot say whether he has concealed it as I have endeavored to do. Yet, in the stillness of the night, as the wind wails outside reminiscent of that tempest, memories flood back to me. The soft glow of candlelight danced across his features, etching shadows and highlights in a delicate play of light. His voice trembled as he uttered that I didn't deserve to feel so isolated. The gentle caress of his hand against my cheek, and I ponder. When our worlds collided in that singular, impossible moment, did something within me shatter? Or has something at last stirred to life? I shall remain in the dark. What I understand is this: I never truly returned from it. I am aware that many of you may form opinions about me. Perhaps that would be a wise choice. Perhaps you find yourself in that very moment, gently tilting your head in disbelief, contemplating. How could she possibly? What could drive a woman to betray her marriage? What of her family? Herself? Is that how it is? Yet, before you allow that judgment to take root in your heart, take a moment to deeply reflect on this question. Have you ever existed in such profound silence that your own thoughts begin to echo like distant whispers in the background? Have you ever longed for a simple touch so intensely that it felt as essential as breathing? Have you ever gazed upon another, anyone at all, and experienced for the first time in ages the sensation of no longer being unseen? For that was precisely what it was. It transcended mere desire. It was not a scandalous fantasy. The theme revolved around solitude. A profound, lingering sense of solitude that resides not merely in your heart. It suits you perfectly. My intentions were never to cause pain to anyone. I never intended for a single moment to alter the course of everything. Yet it did, and I have had to carry that burden. Now I pose this question to you. Was it emotional infidelity? Did the kiss overshadow the years of neglect that preceded it? Is it possible to forgive someone who merely sought, if only for a fleeting moment, to experience the thrill of being alive once more? Have you ever felt the allure of kindness in the absence of love? I don't anticipate that everyone will grasp it. Yet, perhaps, just perhaps, there exists someone out there who understands my words. Perhaps you have experienced it yourself. Perhaps you find yourself in that very moment, ensnared in the stillness, clinging to the fragile strands of hope. And if you are, I trust you will discover your voice before the moment slips away, before you commit to a decision that cannot be undone, before desire eclipses reason. For once that boundary is breached, regardless of the softness or the silence with which it occurs, everything changes irrevocably. If this narrative resonates with you, if you've ever found yourself in a circumstance that defies explanation, even to your own understanding, please share your experience below. I have no intention of passing judgment. I am present to hear you out. If you crave more authentic, intricate tales such as this, be sure to like this video, subscribe, and activate the bell so you never miss a beat. Exclusively found within the pages of the shocking infidelity saga. I appreciate your willingness to listen.